Hello, I'm Jessica Shelley. I'm the co-founder and head educator at Dailies. Today we have Miss Janice with us today to talk about something in the field of education that she is really passionate about. Thank you, Miss Janice, for joining us,
No
one of our
problem.
fabulous DailiesPods teachers. What Tell us a little bit about yourself and your experience teaching and why you like teaching with us.
Okay, well, I'm married and I have a college-age daughter, and I have permanently certified in New York State in both elementary and business education. And I spent lots of time in the classroom and lots of different levels. So when I talk about daily spots, I definitely have the experience in the classroom to compare it to.
Excellent, excellent. And why do you like teaching with us?
Well, teaching in the classroom actually has gotten more complicated, I feel, as I've taught because it's it's large. You have a lot of kids with a lot of different levels of abilities. You have the kids that come in and sit and do great and don't have any problems. You have the child that maybe is seeking attention or relationships with the teacher, not always at the appropriate time. And then you've got the student who really wants to learn, but maybe is a little bit shy and it doesn't volunteer. So you've got so many different levels in the classroom. I feel with smaller groups with daily spots that we have the opportunity to work more individually with the child, to interact with them. Perhaps, two kids are working on a picture, the other child finishes. So then you can maybe say, hey, could you count for me to 20? Or what word starts with A, just to keep them busy and keep them going on their skills. Within a
Mhm,
classroom, it's very hard to do that. So you often have kids that start misbehaving because maybe they finish quickly and they're bored and they start doing things. So you're trying to handle that with making sure
mhm,
the other kids are finishing, and it's much easier, I find, with daily pods to help that student individually, to see where they're going. And it gives kids a chance to interact with each other. Like there's 3 or 4 kids, so they might say something, another kid goes, "I love Frozen," so and then they start talking while they're drawing, so they're interacting with each other, and I think a really healthy and good way. I think it's really fun. It's fun.
Aw, yeah, well, we're so glad that you are with us on our team and that you're enjoying your time with us as well. What topic in education will we be talking about today?
Well, I think really comparing the classroom to Dailies Pods and
Mhm.
what Dailies Pods can offer your child, especially in preparation for school or in addition to school, to help them gain confidence in the skills that they're working on.
That's great. Yeah, I think that Dailies is a semi-new company, and
Mhm.
we're trying to make waves in education and get parents involved in the conversation. And so I love that this topic is brought up so we can kind of clarify some things about our program and really compare it to the experience that they may be receiving if they go to public, private, or charter
Mhm.
school or something in their
Yes.
local area. So I'm excited to get into this with you today. I guess where do you want to start? Like, how do you from your
Well,
experience, I guess, how do you see them being different or the same?
I think Dailies Pods is great for kids that maybe are entering school. They get
Mhm,
the small group situation. They learn to take turns, not talk when the teacher is talking. Maybe if they're working on something and somebody else is finished, they can still work and have the time to complete it while I work with the other child, maybe on some skills. Hey, count to 20 for me or do the
mhm,
ABCs. But I also think dailies can be used to supplement education. It
mhm,
doesn't, oh, my kid goes to school, so, well, they don't need daily pods. Well, that's not true.
mhm,
Maybe your child is doing great in science and social studies and English, but in math, maybe they're struggling a little bit. So we offer so many things, and even the small pods, I can work with your child on first grade math skills, and they
mhm,
can maybe see different ways to do it, or I can see when they work something out for me where they're making a mistake, which is really
mhm,
hard in a large classroom. It's really
mhm,
hard to give that individual attention to a child when you've got 25 students in front of you. And
right.
you have kids going in and out maybe for physical therapy or speech therapy or extra reading or just to see a therapist or in or out. It
Mhm,
disturbs the classroom. Your child might lose focus. I don't think that really happens as much in daily pods because we're a small group. And then if they get off track, I say, "Hey, where are you? You know, are you with us? Or where did you go?"
Right.
So, you know, it's
Yeah.
easier for me to find those needs that the children has. So I think it's great for school preparation, but I also think it's good as a supplement.
Mhm.
And especially, you know, your kid gets home from school and maybe they need something in the afternoon to do. Some of us
Mhm.
live in areas where the weather gets really, really bad. Something to
Mhm.
do. Also, Dailies offers Saturday programs, which I think are great. You know, they go to maybe preschool during the week, but they join our pre-K bridge on Saturday to get some more skills and have some fun. We actually do crafts and music and songs, so there's actually fun. It's not just like, okay, here we're gonna write a sentence, and here we're gonna do math. It's a lot of fun. A lot of fun.
Right. Yeah, we definitely have that integrated approach. So it's like even in, if you attend one session, they're an hour each. They
Mhm,
really do get like you touch on the reading, you touch on the math, and then there's also some sort of themed activity for the day. But
mhm.
literacy and math instruction is incorporated into every class, which is
Yes.
also very unique. There's other programs out there where it's like, oh, I want to sign up for, a first grade math tutoring session.
Mhm,
And it's like,
mhm,
okay, well, how are we making sure that they're okay with literacy without you having to go and book a separate class or a separate
mhm,
time with a different teacher?
mhm,
Everything here is super personal and all about
mhm.
relationships, which I really love. Um, and something I miss, from the physical classroom
Love it.
space.
Yeah.
I was a
Yes.
classroom teacher and it was all about relationships. Behavior management was all about connecting with kids and making sure that they knew that you supported them and then they believe in you as their educator, their teacher. And
Yep,
yeah,
yep. I
it's
love,
changed, and even in the time that I was a teacher. So, yeah.
I love the relationships. They really, and especially because you're in small group, they really get
Mhm.
used to you, and I think they are more comfortable asking questions, because
Mhm.
sometimes when you're in a classroom of 20, 25, 30 students, you're not always sure, do I really want to ask this question? Am I going to embarrass
Mhm.
myself? Is it something the teacher thinks is important? And so they sometimes remain quiet or think, well, I'll ask them later, and later never comes. You're off to gym, you're off to this. So
Yeah.
this is a really centered based program where the kids can ask questions like, I don't really understand that. Or I have one student that always says to me, "Are we doing math today?" I'm like, "Yeah," because she really liked it. So I'm like, "Yeah,
Oh.
gotta do a little bit of this, you know, a little bit of writing and listening to stories and maybe do a little song, but then we will get to math." And I always say, "Oh, math is coming up. We're ready for math." So
Mhm.
she knows she's really confident every time she comes, like, "Oh, we are gonna do math that I really, really like." But we're also doing stuff that she learned. And at the
Mhm.
end, I always ask students, "What did you really like today?" And
Mhm.
that helps me grow as a teacher because they might say, "Ah,
Mhm.
that song was great. So, oh, this child, I need to add more songs next time." So I can really customize the lessons to the students that I'm teaching.
That's amazing. Yeah, definitely harder to do on the grander scale of 25 to 30 kids
Oh,
in your
yes.
classroom. And I mean, in the traditional classroom setting, they absolutely have like small group instruction time, but you think about it too as the frequency of the teacher. Like if you can only
Mhm,
meet with a small group of 5 kids a day, your your student may only get one-on-one time or even a small
mhm,
group time with the teacher once a week, maybe,
mhm,
hopefully two
mhm.
times. But with
And
Dailies Pods, it could be every day.
they
So,
used to crowd by my desk, and I'd try to give everybody attention, but then
mhm,
you're, like, looking at the clock going, "Oh, I really need to start with math," or, "We really need to do the
right.
calendar." And that, classroom teachers are great, they do the best they can, but
Mhm.
it's just really, really hard to give that individual attention. Lots of
Mhm.
times you're thinking, "Why is Sandra not doing well on this math?" And you can't really figure out the reason why, but at
Mhm.
dailies, I can see, okay, she's not lining up things correctly. She's not adding, in rows, so I can see where the mistakes are happening. And
Mhm.
also, like kids give me their input. Sometimes they'll say, "Yeah, the story was okay." I'll say,
Yeah.
"Okay, I need to do something different." And you can mix it up a lot with factual and fictional stories. And there's so
Mhm.
much wealth of things on the internet to add to my lessons. And to
Mhm.
in my experience as well, things that I learned that I like to do when I was teaching the classroom, I can still put into the daily spots. So
Mhm.
it's a win-win situation.
Yeah, yeah. And I think you brought up a great point too, the teachers that are in the classroom setting, like they have the heart for the kids. They want to do
Oh, yeah.
everything they possibly can. It's a matter of, there's, district mandates, state mandates, federal mandates as far as like how many seat minutes you have to have of this topic. And when I was an educator, well, and a classroom teacher, I guess I should say, because I'm still an educator.
Yes, you are.
But as a classroom teacher, I remember, we had to have our set 90-minute reading block. And if,
Mhm,
our administrator walked in at a different time and we weren't doing the literacy block because
mhm,
maybe we were doing an integrated lesson with math and stuff,
mhm,
it was like, well, I thought you were supposed to have 90 minutes of reading today, and I expected to see a reading when I walked in.
mhm.
So it takes away some of those opportunities for that true learning experiences for students, because it's less integrated, and it's
It
meant to
is.
be less integrated in the traditional classroom. And then that's where you see those really stark lines between students that are excelling in math and maybe struggling with reading, or vice versa. And that's what I love about dailies, is that it
Oh,
is
yeah,
so integrated in, and it
it
doesn't
is.
have to be separate. You can think about math when you're doing reading.
Oh,
um
I often will say, "Oh, look how many ducks are on the page. Look at all those ducks. Let's count the ducks." And we're in the middle of reading a story, and I'm like, "Oh, we're counting them." Or somebody wants to tell me, "We raise chickens at home." I'm like, "Oh, tell me about it." I can take that
yeah.
break and have them talk to me, which is a huge part of learning. The communication is
Hmm.
huge. But I also, I use the standard, but I
Hmm.
tweak them to my students.
Hmm.
Maybe they're at the kindergarten level, but in math, they really are at first grade. So I can really
Hmm.
mix the standards with
Yes.
dailies and say, we're going to do adding, which more is a first grade standard. We start to introduce it in kindergarten, but it's much more first grade.
Hmm.
Or on the opposite, they need a little more help. Maybe they aren't writing words yet and they need to go back and do letter sounds and letter identification. I can go
Hmm.
back to some of the preschool standards, and mix that all together. And it's not in a large classroom, the kids figure it out when it's the one reading group is
Hmm.
reading an easier book and one is reading a harder. This kind of just flows together and we're able to help the students based on their needs. And I can do
Hmm.
it even if I have one kid that's in kindergarten level and one kid that's in first grade. You can just say,
Hmm.
"Okay, Tommy, oh, I wonder how many ducks are there. And Leah, what if Tommy said there was six, what if we add two more?" So you can
Hmm.
incorporate both of them because it's a small group. That's very, very hard to do in a large classroom. Very hard.
Absolutely. And I love that you kind of talked about like the K and the one together, because all of the classes that we have at DailiesPods are multi-age for that reason, of making sure that students don't feel like, oh, everybody else knows this and I don't.
Hmm.
It's okay if you're somewhere in the kinder to first grade range. Like, we understand the very beginning of kindergarten all the way through the end of first grade if you're in that K1 class, and we're working
Hmm.
on all of those standards simultaneously. And being able to adapt that instruction is incredibly critical, really, for
Oh,
kids,
it is.
especially as they get started in school, but even more as they kind of maybe struggle with confidence and things as they approach middle school, which is like a whole nother realm of kids.
And I'll have the kids, like,
And
if I've
talented.
had somebody with me for a while and they
Hmm.
know my rules, like, "Oh, let's point to the eyes. What do we do with these? We watch."
Hmm.
I'll say, "Okay, Timmy, would you help me show Susie the rules? Let's do them together." And they really feel, "Oh, I've learned this. I can help." So that's
Hmm.
really good for them too. And taking turns, I can do it so much easier in a small group because I
Hmm.
know, if someone maybe likes to share a lot, we talk about, let's zip the lip. This is time to zip the lip and use the eyes to look and the ears to listen. So
Hmm.
we can focus on, they need to learn that other people have things they want to say, or maybe they struggle and I know they don't like to share. I can say, let's let Ann tell us what she did. So you can
Hmm.
focus on that one child, maybe to get them to share, to get
Hmm.
some confidence in a small group
Hmm.
situation before going into that large group. And that gives them the confidence, like, hey, I'm right sometimes. So maybe I
Hmm.
can share. So I think it's really great for that. Really, really great.
Yeah, yeah. I was actually chatting with some family members last night about Dailies Pods and what we offer
Mhm,
here. And they were like, well, how do you do social skills? Like, that would be my biggest concern with virtual
mhm,
education is, they're not in the same proximity as other kids. Like, they don't
mhm.
understand like how to communicate. And, kind of maybe you could touch on that from your perspective, as far as like, how do we really address those, skills that aren't necessarily explicitly taught, but more
Mhm.
implied within that social setting.
And it's so great when, say, "Okay, we're gonna spend the time sharing," because then they're
Mhm,
like, "Okay, here, I'm gonna share now." Because sometimes they don't have anything to share. So when you do a small group, you just interact
mhm,
with each other. You might be drawing a picture and somebody says, this picture I'm drawing is a winter picture reminds me of the movie Frozen." And Susie goes, "I love Frozen." And I might say, "Well, what's your favorite character in Frozen?" And it encourages a conversation when they don't even realize they're
mhm,
interacting, or they're doing a craft. And I said, "Oh, Tom, look at that triangle Tom drew. Can you show us that triangle?" And he shows it. He's like, "Wow, I'm showing. I'm giving an example." And the other kids they
mhm,
really do. They look like,
mhm,
"Oh, he drew it like that." And sometimes it's simply interaction between me and the student where they're getting
mhm,
confidence talking to an adult and realizing that we have interest. I often will draw the picture
mhm.
with the students, and I'll say, "Remember,
Absolutely.
Miss Janice is not a great car." So it doesn't have to be perfect.
Mhm.
Because they'll say to me, "I don't know how to draw." Like yesterday, I did a story about worms, and the little girl's like, "I don't know how to draw a worm." I'm like, "You know what? We're gonna do it together. Let me show you." And what were the parts called? And she was like, "Segments." I'm like, "Okay, we have to have segments. How many should we have?" And she's like, "Oh, 6." And so we drew the circles together, and she didn't even know we were interacting and talking, and she was helping with the
Mhm,
lesson. So it's so great that way because I think they find it easier to talk when it's in small groups. Like they make
mhm,
friends in the classroom, and if you allow them to just break into any groups they want, you'll always see a lot of interaction because they're in small groups and they feel
mhm.
more comfortable talking to each other versus, okay, who has something to share? And all 25 of them look at each other like, who's going to be the first
Right.
one to share? Or it's always the same kid that shares, and you want to hear
Yep.
from Ann, and it's always Pete that raises his hand. So it's just
Right.
easier. I could say, "Pete, that's a great idea. Ann, what do you think about that?" I can do that in a small group. But really,
Mhm,
I have found the interactions really nice.
mhm,
Unfortunately, in a large classroom, lots of times you're dealing with discipline and maybe somebody who's not doing what they need to be doing, which kind of
mhm,
shuts down the communication. And
mhm,
I don't find that with Dailies Pods. I don't find that at all. I find that we're just working and getting through things and moving, and we have a routine, and I think
mhm,
the kids like that. When I teach, I want them focused on me. I do the same rules that I would do in a large classroom. Miss Janice is talking, we zip our lip, we're listening. I'll
mhm,
say, "Where are you? We need to hurry up. You need to finish this activity." And then maybe if they don't, I'll say, "Oh, Tim, would you help me count to 30 so Mara knows when to finish so we are counting
mhm,
together?" And it's just really
mhm.
fun because I find the interaction goes really, really smoothly.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, and I think that that was pretty much to the sentiment that I had shared with that family
Mm.
member as well as, it's even more. I feel like you get even more from the small group interaction because you can actually take those teachable moments too of like, hey, when someone is talking, we can use our eyes to let them know that we're listening.
Mhm.
And that plays right into your rules too of, if Miss Janice is talking, then we're watching Miss Janice.
Or your
Um,
friends. I say, it's your
or your
friends.
friends, yeah.
I said, yeah, just the same if Sally's talking, we're
Yep.
listening to her because it's her time. And
Hmm.
kids want to share. They do. They're like, "Oh," I'm like,
Yeah.
"Ooh, zip, we need to listen." And then, I can also, as a small group, notice what kids are interested in.
Hmm.
Maybe they really love talking about outdoor activities. So I start to
Hmm.
notice that, and maybe next lesson we might do something with that or we talk about it. I'll say, "Well, what do you like to do? What are you doing after this?" One of my girls
Mhm,
does karate and she loves to talk to me. So it's a great opportunity for them to share something that interests them and have someone pay attention to what they're
mhm,
talking about. And then the English comes in. I'm like, I didn't quite understand that. Could you explain that to me again? And that helps them with their sentence structure, and their
mhm.
ability to share the information. It's really
Excellent.
scary for some kids to share
Mhm,
really can be. And I think the larger the group, the harder it is for them to learn. It's okay. It's
mhm.
okay to say something about that. Because they get really used to their teacher with daily pods. And I think it gives them confidence.
Yes, they definitely get that comfort feel, and I
Mhm,
think, you had mentioned too the overall structure of the lessons, and
mhm,
we have it built in for, like, the first 10 to 15 minutes of just relationship building
yeah,
time in every single class because it is
mhm,
so important for the kids to know that their teacher is interested in what they're interested in, can listen to what they for dinner last night or what they did over
Mhm.
the weekend, and
I
their
even do
peers as
weather.
well.
I'll be
That's
like,
great.
"Looks
Yeah.
looks like it's sunny out there." Instead of saying, "Okay, what's the weather today?" Like, we talk
Hmm.
about it, like, "Oh," when it was wintertime, I'd say, "Oh, I have snow here," and they'd be like, "Really?" I'm like, "Yeah, we have a lot of snow in New York State."
Hmm.
And they'll say, "Oh, we have it's sunny." I'm like, "You're so lucky you get to go out and play. What do you like to do?"
Hmm.
And other kids kinda watch what they do, and then they might start adding more and get a little more confident to
Yeah.
talk. It takes time sometimes with some students. Some of
Hmm.
them will just wanna listen, and that's okay. But then you
Hmm.
can maybe start to learn who they are and ask them specific questions. Like,
Hmm.
"So mom brought you something to eat. What are you eating?" Easy question, because sometimes it's their
Right.
breakfast time or lunchtime,
Hmm.
which I think is fun. I have kids from all different, time zones. I might have 2 with Eastern and 1 with Pacific, so it's
Yeah.
fun to learn what they're doing at the time. Um
Yeah, I think my kiddos have been in a class of yours maybe a few times
Mhm.
even. And one of the biggest things that I appreciate as a parent is the diversity of the classes.
Oh, yeah,
We are
yeah.
so limited really about where our geographic area is in
Mhm.
access to education. I mean, if you live in a rural area, you may not even have a preschool around.
No,
Um,
no.
and it really is so cool to have them interacting with kids that are living in California or New
Mhm,
York or Texas
mhm.
or wherever, and they bring those different perspectives from their life of, I appreciate you you sharing too, like, oh, it's snowing outside my window. Oh, it's sunny for you. Like it's so cool. That's
Why? What?
what
Yeah,
better
that's
teaching
it.
experience than that really too, of like,
Yeah,
where you live geographically affects what the weather is like. It may affect like the kind of food you like to eat or where you like to
mhm.
go.
Or your
Um,
culture, maybe you like to eat
yeah,
different foods to your culture, and they talk about that, and then also I've had come up where some students are used to somebody talking about living in an apartment. They live
yeah.
in a big city. I have some kids from New York City, so I mean, yeah, whole different world for them. They're going to have to go somewhere for a playground, or
Mhm.
they're up on the 27th floor. They don't walk outside and jump in their pool. So some of those things are very. When I was a little kid, I thought everybody lived exactly like I lived. I had no clue that anybody lived exactly.
Yeah.
And this really, really helps because you're not going to get the chance to. I have some students who've just moved here from India. How
Mhm.
fun is that? They can share
Right.
their culture and what they do. And I think
Mhm.
Dailies, on another note, helps kids learn English that have
Mhm.
moved here from a different country or
Mhm.
are looking at English as their second language.
Mhm.
It's really, I can really take time with them and do the letter sounds and the words and have them do sentences and then remember what we worked on last week and add to it the following week. So
Mhm.
Dailies is great for kids that are learning English as a second language. I have a couple of students like that presently.
That's great. And I think that you bring up a great point with that program too. With our teachers that do teach the English as a second language,
Mhm,
integrated within their pods is,
mhm,
they're you can start them early and we can help support whatever is happening too in their
mhm,
public school or private school or charter school, wherever they are.
mhm.
Or we can be their full replacement. We actually have a family that lives in Canada currently, and they
Oh,
tried out Dailies Pods for a month or two,
mhm,
and they had a kindergartner. And by the end of their first like 4 or 5
mhm.
months with Dailies Pods, their kindergartner was at the end of first grade level and was an
Wow,
English language learner. And
wow.
she hopped on a call with me and the child's teacher, and we kind of
Mhm,
talked about, oh, she wants to go to have their child attend public school in the fall, and
mhm,
she didn't kind of know how to navigate that as well. And
mhm.
we're super supportive here. Of course, we want to make
Oh,
sure that the
yeah.
families choose the right option for them.
Whatever's right for them, yes.
Yeah.
It's so important, and I think, you've always talked about when you learn a language, if someone is in high school, immersion is the greatest way, go to France,
Hmm.
be in France, you're gonna be immersed in the language. Well, I think Dailies immerses them in the English language as well.
Hmm.
It's not all sitting there saying letter sounds, it's conversations
Right.
we're having that helps them. What does that word mean? I don't know what that word means.
Hmm.
So you help them because English can be very tough. The consonants and vowels don't really sound like pronounced like they say. So
Yes.
it's a great, great immersion from DailiesPods that helps them
Hmm.
just be comfortable learning the language, especially if they're young. They pick up on it
Hmm.
so quickly, especially if they're immersed in it. It's very tough to walk into a classroom of 25 kids that speak it
Hmm.
fluently. and be the only one who doesn't. So I think Dailies
Mhm.
Pods gives them a great start, or even as an addition to their school day to help
Mhm.
them have just a little bit of one-on-one in our tutoring, or talking about, being in a small group situation versus a large classroom.
Yeah, and it really does come down to that small group instruction.
Mhm,
I remember as a classroom teacher, our English language program was a pull-out program, and then
mhm,
they switched to a push-in. And it's more about like how do we support their language development
mhm,
as a general education teacher when we also have the specialist there who's maybe working with them or
mhm,
um, something like that as well. So it really does come down to that small group interaction and how they can feel comfortable talking to, two, three, four of their peers and their educator who
mhm,
is, really interested in what they're trying to share and giving them the
mhm,
tools they need in order to like respond. Um, and yeah, it's all about that personalization and making sure that families get what they need and the kids mostly get what they need, and
mhm.
how it makes sense for them,
One of
which I
my
love the
girls
adaptability.
said the other day, "My cousin's coming from India." I'm like, "Wow, how long has it been
Whoa.
since you've seen them?" I said, "What are you gonna do together? What is his name? Help me pronounce it." So we must have had a 5-minute conversation about her cousin, but I learned so much, and she could
Mhm.
share, and it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun, and I couldn't do that in a full classroom.
Yeah.
I tried the best I could, and we'd have share time, but I'd have to say, "Okay, we have to move on. Mary needs to share, and Pete needs to share," and so you couldn't have a long time. It usually was in calendar time in the morning where we greet each other and have a little time to share, but that was about it because you had
Mhm.
to get through the curriculum.
Mhm.
Here we have time in our pods to spend, like you said in the beginning, and then
Mhm.
maybe even when we're reading a story or something, it's like, "Oh, I've been to a farm. Yeah, I remember." And I'll stop and I'll go, "What did you see on the farm?" So we can do
Mhm.
that a lot more with daily
Mhm.
spots.
Yeah, yeah. More bang for your buck
Yeah,
as far as
yeah.
time-wise goes, I guess, with Dailies Pods.
Well, I just think
Um
it's the teacher really I wish I'd had it. My daughter's in her early 20s, and I wish I had had it because especially in the summertime, what a great way to stop that. They always say, they lose, 25-30% of
Mhm.
what they've learned. What a great way to keep that going in the summertime when
Mhm.
they're home and they're like, okay, let's not forget all our consonants and our vowel sounds through the summer, or let's remember
Mhm.
how to count. And it's fun. It's not like you're just saying, "Okay, we're gonna do lesson after lesson." It's
Mhm.
fun, it's stories, it's crafts, it's music, it's all put together, so the kids have a
Mhm.
lot of fun, and they always say they don't know they're learning. They're having so much
Right?
fun. They're having so much fun.
Yeah. And it's only an hour, so it's not
Mhm.
even like a
Yep.
full school day, and you can get so much in within that hour. And then we also provide the supplementary learning resources for families
Mhm.
so that they can continue learning
Yeah,
at home. And we
which is
have
hard to
large group
find.
classes and small group
Mhm.
classes and tutoring and
And
um
Dailies
yeah.
Pods offers so many different programs too. You could go 3 days a week for an hour. Maybe they do swim
Mhm.
lessons on Tuesday, so you don't wanna do it that day.
Mhm.
They can go 5 days a week and even add on Saturday if they want,
Yeah.
or Sunday. So, yeah,
Mhm.
it's really customized to work with your child. And then if
Mhm.
you go on vacation, you just let us know and come back the following week. It's just
Yeah.
it's easy. It's really, a great program for either introduction to school and learning or supplement to school and
Mhm.
learning. It's really fun,
Yeah.
great
Yeah.
class.
And we're actually, I don't know if you know this, but we're actually working on our full comprehensive offer. So we can be a
Ooh,
full school replacement. So that'll be coming
ooh,
soon as well. Um,
wow. And
yeah.
I think school today is gonna be
Mhm.
a lot different. There's gonna be more
Yes.
choices. Some people like virtual, some didn't, but we learned a lot through COVID, that there
Mhm.
are different ways to learn.
Mhm.
There's different ways that are right for your child.
Mhm.
Some homeschool learning is better, and then they go and they spend time in a swimming pool or gymnastics or dance.
Mhm.
Whatever makes your child happier. I think
Mhm.
we wanted in the education system in the United States, we want a cookie cutter everybody. Okay.
Mhm.
Everybody takes this, and then we move on to this, and then we move on to this. Well, that isn't every kid. Some
Mhm.
kid might be already, like you said, entering kindergarten at first grade level. So
Mhm.
if we're cookie cuttering and they're sitting there bored.
Right.
My daughter started kindergarten and she was reading and they were doing letter sounds.
Yep.
And as a parent, because I was an educator, I intervened and said, yeah, I think she needs to be in some type of more advanced program. Well, Dailies can do that. We're
Mhm.
not locked in. We follow the standards, but we're not locked in to a cookie cutter, because to be fair to the teachers, they have to teach. So you can't be doing 16 different things. You can do small groups maybe once a day, but you actually have certain curriculum you have to get through for the majority.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're in one as a minority, maybe thinking, geez, my kid is really good at reading, can we give them more books of interest? Because if
Mm-hmm.
you're doing reading and you're at a third grade level and you're in first grade, you don't want to read the first grade books. You want to maybe
Mm-hmm.
read. So I think DailiesPods really helps with not putting us into that cookie cutter education system that I think needs to change.
Mm-hmm.
We need to make learning more fun and what
Mm-hmm.
they want. And I think DailiesPods does that. I really do.
I love that point too that you brought up of the curriculum that is provided by districts or mandated by districts,
Mhm,
adopted by districts, whatever you want to call it, is for the majority of students. So if your child falls on either side of the spectrum in there,
mhm.
or has maybe special needs, or
Yes.
any of those things that affect their learning, they don't fall into that box, and there's something
Mhm,
else that must be done in order to really like recapture them
mhm,
into that learning process and make them excited about learning, because it can be really overwhelming for them, and then it's overwhelming for parents because they're like,
mhm.
it went 6 8 weeks and I had no idea that there was a
Yeah.
problem, and then it's too
And this is
late.
what you have to learn. Yeah, I remember my
Yeah.
daughter with math, did really well with math, got to high school. Um, the Common Core gives you a certain time that you have to different lessons. Okay, this is supposed to be 45-minute lesson, and then you move on to next. And she'd be like, oh, wait a minute, I don't understand what we just did in
Mhm.
the past 45 minutes. And it
Mhm.
makes a child give up,
Mhm.
because they can't keep up and they can't
Mhm.
learn. And then, because you'd have to take certain regions, we'd have her go through tutoring, which is more small group situation. And
Mhm.
all of a sudden she'd be like, oh, because the tutor or the teacher could let say different steps to do it.
Mhm.
When maybe, it's hard to pay attention, especially when you're
Mhm.
a teenager and all of a sudden this stuff's flying by you and you're like, oh
Right.
yeah, I was daydreaming about something else. I missed that 10 minutes. So,
Yes.
and then you got the kids who do really well, and you're thinking, oh, they finished the test in 15 minutes, and you're thinking, I'm on question two. So I think
Mhm.
that happens. I see test anxiety at very young ages when I was in the classroom with these state
Mhm.
tests and different things. So I think dailies really allows the child to develop at their pace, which is
Mhm.
always what I thought as an educator was the best thing, but
Mhm.
very difficult to do in the class. Very difficult. Sometimes you have to
Mhm.
say, okay, just wait a second. Let's make sure that we understand this one sentence before we go on. The kid in
Mhm.
the back is like, okay, I read it 3 times already. Yeah, so
Mhm.
it's hard. It's hard. It's really hard.
Yes, it's so true. And I attended lots of professional development and
Mhm,
things, and even some of the newer things are like, oh, there's a 15-minute mini lesson, and then there's like 30 to 45 minutes of independent practice or group
mhm,
practice. Um, or guided practice is the term, I guess.
mhm,
So it's more too of like, how do you really get your bang for your buck? If you're doing a 15-minute mini lesson every day,
mhm,
how long will it really take you to get through a whole instructional unit in the classroom if that's like
mhm,
the time that you're limited to? And so we can move much quicker too with Dailies Pods, because
mhm.
it's the small group. You can see if the kids are getting it, or you can see if they're not, and you can adjust as needed in that overall flow.
I had one student that kept doing backwards S, which is very normal for kindergarten, first grade.
Hmm.
But I was able to stop it and say, okay, let's see, how do we make an S? And focus almost like a 15-minute lesson on that letter S,
Hmm.
which I couldn't have done in a live classroom. I wouldn't have
Yeah.
had the time to do that. You want
Hmm.
to, you can start to tell when kids are struggling with different things, maybe a few kids,
Hmm.
but it's very hard to say, okay, I'm going to pull these 4 kids for extra math lesson while you kids do this, and
Hmm.
you've got no one to guide them when what they're doing. You're with a small group, so
Hmm.
it's very hard. Teachers do a great job and the best they can, but I think Daily Pods gives you that chance to notice where someone might be struggling or doing really well. I don't
Hmm.
need to have this kid count; he's already adding. So it's like,
Right.
it's like, let's move this on. They're
Yes.
bored going 1 2 3 4. They can count to 500. And some of them
Uh-huh.
want to try. I was like, whoa, stop.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and it's so great. It is so adaptable for everyone in the spectrum of learning. Not only does it serve its place for the majority, but we are also inclusive. We have educators on our team that have their special education credential, have experience working with students with
Mhm,
autism, ADHD, can help parents even kind of
mhm,
navigate ways to support their learner at home, even.
mhm,
And I love too that the learning space that we create in dailies is something that's comfortable for kids. They're in
mhm.
their own physical space
Yes,
where they
yes.
can have whatever they need in order to learn. You don't have to worry about, oh, it's too loud in the classroom and they can't
Oh, yeah,
access the learning and they have to go take
yes.
a break. They can mute the computer for a minute if they need to take a break. They can walk away for a second, come
Mhm.
right back. They'll still be
I have
treated as part of the
kids
class.
I let jump for a little while, like, "Let's do a little," because they just keep
Yes.
having a hard time focusing. "Okay, let's just do a little jumping, a little music," and then we're like,
Yeah.
"Oh," I'm like, "Okay, now we need to do this,"
Mhm.
because, some kids don't even wanna sit,
Yep.
they're more comfortable standing, and then you can let them do that. When it's
Yes.
hard, you can in a large classroom, but I've often noticed, like, even if you gave bouncy balls to some kids that had a hard time sitting,
Mhm.
everybody wants bouncy balls. Why does
Yep.
John have the bouncy ball? Why can't I have the bouncy ball? Next thing I look up and Sammy's sitting on the bouncy ball. It's like, well, how
Mhm.
did we do that? How did you get the bouncy ball? So
Yes.
it's you could do that a little bit more with daily spots, definitely.
Yeah, yeah, and my kiddo, well, both of them, my oldest too, but my middle kiddo, he is definitely the kid that is, like, moving and he wants
Mhm.
to do all of the things at the same time.
And there's nothing
Um,
wrong with that, they're just a
Nothing wrong.
different learner. They're just a
Yeah,
different learner, and
and at
and daily
home
spots helps with that.
exactly, and at home, I have a wobble stool, which is a strategy that I use in the classroom for
Mhm.
kiddos that needed to move, and so he has a wobble stool that he can, sit on and do his
Back
Dailies
and
Pods
forth a little
class,
bit.
and
Yeah,
yeah. And my other child, which my oldest one, he's very much like, okay, this is my space. These are my
this is what we're
pens. These
supposed
are
to be
my,
doing.
yeah,
Yes, yes,
yes.
yeah, that was my
So,
daughter, "Why doesn't Tim baby he's bothering me?" Why is he,
yeah,
tapping me on the shoulder when I'm trying to do my math? I was like,
yeah.
I don't, and then my daughter was well behaved, she was, even though she's my daughter, but she was. And then in the cafeteria, they sit her next to kids who weren't well behaved because she was supposed to be this good example. I'm like,
Mm,
wait a minute, I don't know how
yeah.
that's gonna work. So with Dailies Pod, you just kind of have fun with all the kids that you have there, because
Mhm,
you can say, "Okay, Stephen, we just need to focus on this, and guess what? Music is coming after this, and we're gonna get dancing, and we're gonna do this,"
mhm.
which it's hard to do and notice everybody in a big classroom. It is.
Yeah, yeah. If you have one kid that's ready to like move and groove in the
Mhm,
classroom in the traditional setting, what if your 24 other kids are like super focused on the activity? Like, how do you give him a break when you're in the middle of,
maybe it's
a
quiet
mini
reading,
lesson?
or, they're supposed to be
Oh,
reading
yes.
for 10, 15 minutes, and they got the
Yes.
one kid, "What are we gonna do
Yeah.
this?"
Yeah.
It's like,
So
uh,
they can
that
learn like those coping skills too in their physical
mhm,
setting. And we do a
mhm.
really great job too with parents of I've hopped on more than a handful of calls,
Oh, yeah.
a few handfuls of calls, to help parents kind of navigate how to set up their learning space at home. Like,
Mhm,
hey, my child's really active. What can I do to
mhm,
kind of help support their engagement in their classes? I would love to chat with parents and help them set up their learning space or talk through
mhm.
strategies that we can kind of implement with the teacher and also at home to kind of create that consistency for them.
I really think
Um,
too, we give daily reports. You don't get that with
yes.
a large classroom. I
Hmm.
always write, did really well in this, seems to really know her words. Um, Really, we're trying to work with her to make sentences, and because some kids like put one word up here and one down here and over here, so you're
Hmm.
trying to, but you really can give the parent the report. And I've seen a lot of parents, like, if I say, "Oh, Tommy, we're still trying to work on him taking turns. He loves to share." I'll see improvement because the parents will say, maybe even talk to them, say, "We gotta let Susie share too, her stuff's important," because you give that individual report and then you give a weekly report at the end. So they
Hmm.
really know, where their kid is having fun or having strength or maybe needs to work on something. Maybe they're having
Hmm.
a hard time with recognizing numbers. Parent can buy something or go to our extra resources and do that after you give that daily report.
Hmm.
I give, I think it was 4 times a year with report cards.
Yeah.
So, and you try to give notes for kids,
Hmm.
individual, but it will always be while they were getting ready for the bus, and I'm trying to write these notes
Right.
for kids. This way, immediately when I finish Daily Pods, I go right to my notes, and write exactly what happened in the classroom. So it's really
Hmm.
fresh and it's really on task. It's not,
Hmm.
7 weeks later going, your child's having trouble adding when they've been having trouble adding for 7 weeks. So
Right.
it's great for that. Great for that.
Yeah, yeah, there can be so much wasted time, and then by the time that, 8 weeks has passed and you
Mhm.
realize your child is struggling with addition, now you have to also get a tutor, but instructionally in the classroom, we've moved on 2 lessons ago or 2
Oh yeah.
units ago.
We're
So,
now subtracting, and they don't even know how to add. I
yeah,
often
yeah.
would see kids that had no idea what their multiplication tables, and we'd be in
Mhm,
division or fractions, and they'd be going 9 times 3. And if
mhm,
with daily pods, we could really spend some time doing multiplication before we moved on. It's not like,
mhm,
okay, this is January, we need to be working on this. This is where your kid needs to be. Yes,
mhm,
we get through the standard, and we get through what they need to go on to the next level, but we can also customize.
mhm. Yes, absolutely, and it's that continuous forward momentum and progress really too.
Right.
We always provide a goal, at least one goal for next time that we want to go ahead and cover in
Yes.
those daily
Yes.
reports. And
Hmm.
that's so critical too for parents to know, like, hey, we're making progress on this still. We're still aware of this,
Hmm.
one thing, but it's also not this overwhelming list of like, oh, your child has all of these deficits or they're failing everything. There's strength in knowing, what they're doing good at. And even if yesterday they could count to 5 and today they counted to 6, that's progress.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
they're moving up.
And it's in a
So,
narrative form too, which I think is
mhm,
easier for parents to understand
mhm.
versus, maybe developing,
Yes,
Excel. Yeah, it's
all of those great
where
ones
they
on the
really
report
fit
card.
into there. Yes, yeah. So narratives help
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah, yeah, a story about your kid after every class. You can get the
Yes.
inside scoop. So,
Hmm.
yeah, I love that you bring that up. Well, is there anything else that you'd want to talk about or cover today as far as the differences or benefits or cons of
I just think
traditional versus daily spots?
Dailies Pods is great because you can customize how you want your child to learn. We offer large group if you really want to learn what Dailies Pods is all about, which is a teacher really demonstrating different lessons with your child participating, but not in the conversation as much. It's
Hmm.
more of a larger group situation just to get to know Dailies Pods.
Hmm.
And then the teacher will say, I teach this pod at this time. Or, there's other teachers that teach it at a more convenient time for you. And
Hmm.
then we also have tutoring, which we can do one-on-one with your students if they're struggling in a certain area. And you said we're working on towards maybe formatting a whole day program.
Hmm.
So, there's so many options that can fit your child, and you have a free trial to start with. So,
Hmm.
you go to the free trial, you say, wow, I really like this, or I wonder if I really like a different teacher. All
Hmm.
these teachers have videos and explain who they are and how they teach. So it's great. I think it's really great.
Yes, yes, and I love too that you kind of brought up the teachers. I'm sorry, I'm just gonna pop in here one more time at the end. But it really is that connection with the teacher. The fact that you could have the same teacher for pre-K as you have for K1, like
Mhm,
that's also completely different than what you could get in any sort of physical classroom
mhm,
setting.
mhm,
There is looping, which is the term for when a teacher moves from
mhm.
one grade level to the next with their kids. But it can't go on forever. I mean, you can't
No,
loop all the way through 5th grade.
I wouldn't be able to
Um,
teach high school physics. That's what, whoa. We're
oh my
trying
gosh.
it out.
Yeah, but with Dailies Pods, because we have multi-age classes, they can have their teacher for like
Mhm,
numerous years. And I say years, but we don't really work on like the traditional school year calendar either. So you move
no,
up when you're ready to move up.
mhm.
You're not restricted by like, oh, my child's birthday is August 25th. So thank goodness he can get into kindergarten this year.
Yeah,
It's like
yeah.
if your
Woo.
child's ready for kindergarten, he can join in June, he can join in April, whenever. And we use
I
that
have
free
a
trial
oh,
class to really figure out student level and provide that recommendation. So it is seamless for parents. It's like we're here to help and support, and if the first thing doesn't work, we're going to try another thing and we're going to find the right fit for you.
I have a girl this summer that was in preschool, and she's gone to K1 for the
Mhm.
summer because she's way advanced and she really needs that challenge. And
Hmm.
sometimes to make a little mistakes or not get it right, so she learns to slow down and look
Yeah.
at things because she was so good at the other one. She was so fast. So
Hmm.
she's not in kindergarten yet, but she's doing kindergarten one with me this summer. So it's
Yeah.
great. Great.
Yes, that flexibility and ultimate like
Mhm.
personalization. It's less about the majority. I'm going to refer back to your words, but less about the majority and more about the individual student. No matter where
Mhm.
they are on that spectrum, we have a program that matches their needs, and
Yes.
we can provide those personalized recommendations for parents too to make the navigating of what
Mhm.
their options are when it comes to education a little bit more manageable, because it
And I
can
always tell
be
parents,
overwhelming.
don't be afraid, if you go in and it's pre-K bridge and you find your kid really should be in kindergarten or maybe back in preschool, we can
Hmm.
do that. It's not like
Yeah.
you signed up for a 6-month program. Oh gosh, we're stuck here
Right.
in preschool bridge because we signed up for. So
Right.
we can. It always is conversation with the
Hmm.
teachers, and the teacher might even say, they seem to be knowing all their numbers and their letters and their reading. Maybe they should try out a K1. So
Yeah.
it's fun that way too.
Yes, yes. So great. So great. Well, thank you so much, Miss Janice, for joining
Oh,
us
it's been
today.
great. Yeah.
Yeah, I love talking about Dailies Pods and the things that we're doing to help and support families and the relationships truly that we're building with our teachers and our students and our families.
And there's free
It's
trial, so come and try
free
us.
trial. Yeah, yeah. If you're not already a Daily Pods family,
Mhm,
feel free to take advantage of that free trial class and we'll help you with placement.
mhm,
And also just learn more about your family and what your goals are for them. We do have those flexible programming that Miss Janice had mentioned about 3, 5 days a week, whatever you need to fit into your schedule and also help moving that or helping the child progress, excuse me, um, as they are with us at Dailies
yes.
Pods. We would love to have you and your family join us. If you do have any questions or want to see Miss Janice in action, feel free
Yep.
to join one of her pods as your free trial class. And as always, just let us know if we can help. We are a call, text, or message away.
Mhm.
But we hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Thank you again for joining us. And we hope to see you in a free trial class soon if you're not already a family with us.
Yeah, thanks. Hope to
Thank
see you.
you. Bye bye.